Hi, you guys. We're back with Dr. Rand for Ask the Doc. It's been a minute, so we have some good questions for you guys this month. So, first one, Doc. Hello, Doc. I'm hearing a lot about NAD as of late. What are your thoughts on it? And also, is it better to take in oral form or injectable? Thank you so much, Mark N.
So, Mark, thank you for the question. NAD plus, meaning without an electron, is what we're referring to. And the idea, the theory behind NAD being used as a supplement, when I say NAD, I mean NAD, minus the electron, is that it's going to help with DNA repair. It's going to work via the sirtuin, one of the sirtuin genes, and there are some clinics that want to use it for detox. There's a fellow, I'm not going to remember his name, but he's down there in Missouri where he's had great success. I've spoken to him directly over the course of years. Actually, I've known him for a while. We don't have any studies though for that, but anecdotally, he seems to do very well. Maybe it's a good adjunct. He seems to feel pretty confident that there's a direct effect on breaking the addiction pattern that comes about from using NAD in its pure NAD plus form intravenously, though.
Wow.
And that comes down, I guess, in part to the question. Orally, what's happening is you're not taking NAD plus. I don't think it's even. I don't think it would be a stable molecule. I know it's a big molecule, but anyway, so we get precursors, NR, nicotinamide riboside, or NMN, which is, oh boy, nicotinamide mononucleotide. That's a mouthful. At any rate, and there's arguments about which one's better. They both are precursors, but here's the deal. So oral absorption obviously has to go through the GI tract, and because of that, a limited amount actually makes it into the bloodstream, which is a good start anyway. And I'll come back to why I say it that way in a second. But the precursors eventually want to end up as NAD plus inside the cell. And orally, again, you've got the limitation as to how much you take versus how much actually gets absorbed and then finally get placed in the bloodstream and then eventually the cell. But we have found through studies that with I think as little as maybe 250 or maybe at least 500 milligrams twice a day, we can get serum levels up. So in your blood, we can see, oh yeah, it's working. It's getting the levels up in the bloodstream. But here's the rub. Okay, how does it get into the cell from there?
Mm-hmm.
And how much of it actually goes into the cell? Whether it's the myocyte, the cardiomyocyte, or the liver, which I guess the liver is a bad example because that's part of the GI tract. A lot of it can go through there, but depending upon where you want it to go, we have limited evidence that it actually goes there. Certainly has trouble getting to the brain because of the blood-brain barrier, at least. And so oral has its limited benefits, and I say limited just because limited information is the problem. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of anecdotal information that suggests that it's doing something, and I always argue even a placebo effect. Placebo is an effect, but I think most people believe it's more than that, and it does make some sense. But again, without the randomized placebo-controlled studies, we're not going to have the ability to say, "Hey, this we know works." And sometimes that's just a start, obviously, because we need to know the mechanisms which are theorized, but we have to prove those. Anyway, sorry for the primer on the way this works. I think most people know that already. But the other option outside of oral would be actually, well, Mark mentions intramuscular, but there's also, as I already mentioned, the intravenous. Obviously, when you inject intramuscularly or use it intravenously, you're bypassing the GI. So the presumption, and the fact is that more of it will get into the body. And I say that because, again, mouth to anus is not really in the body yet. It's in a tube that's about to go into the body once it passes through the intestines, right? Typically. But obviously we're bypassing that, and that raises blood levels. There are risks that come with any injections. I'll bypass that because everyone knows what that is.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're faced with the same problem. Okay, it raises your serum levels, but does that mean it's going inside the cell? And what's interesting about that, I say to circle back, is it looks like now the only way it's going to go into the cell, even if you're doing the pure NAD plus, is by a process that sometimes requires active transport, but it's not just going to diffuse across. And in either case, I should say, it gets the NAD gets transformed back into NR or NMN in order to get into the cell anyway.
Oh.
That's what I currently read is what the mechanism or the way this works, or supposedly works. So there's an argument now that, well, okay, let's definitely stick with NR or NMN because you're just making the body work too hard or harder anyway to get it to where it needs to be inside the cell to work. Now, I always say this, that, as a start, if you're, saving your powder for other things, you might scratch NAD off the list. Its precursors, the intravenous form or intramuscular form, because one of the best ways to generate it is the redox reaction, right? Turning food and usable energy and NADH along the mitochondria to NAD. That's the best way to create it, right? You're getting exercise, and by definition, therefore, it's inside the cell to begin with. So, I think if you read like Dr. Sinclair's material, I think, and I don't mean to suggest anything, but what I think I'm observing is that you got a fellow who works his butt off, right, and doesn't have that much time for exercise. And I know, again, if you read between the lines, I think it sounds like he's saying, I work out about once a week. Okay, well, then that makes a lot of sense to, ingest a molecule or inject, however, you want to do this, to make up for the fact that you're not exercising and getting all the benefits, purported benefits. I shouldn't even say purported. Definitely there are benefits to NAD. We know that it definitely works the way we say it does. The theory part is whether we can generate the same benefits by using a supplemental form. So the rest of it's pretty much proven that, this is a good thing. So, if and even for athletes, you could say, well, on the day off, maybe, we don't have proof of this, but maybe I take my NAD supplement on that day, right? But at any rate, we don't think there's any harm in taking the recommended dosages. We haven't seen any, although I would argue anecdotally, and I would include personally anecdotally, if I took too much, like as much as what I mentioned earlier, a full gram, 500 and 500, I'd get a headache. And maybe it's in combination with something else I'm doing. This is a problem with not having the right kind of study, but whatever. I've heard other people complain about that enough to know that whether it's a direct cause of the NR or NMN itself, I'll say for me it was NR, or a combination of that and something else that we don't know what that might be yet. That could be a menace. Nobody likes headaches. So at any rate, I think though it's safe to say that it is safe enough to try, and maybe start with a 250 once a day dose and work your way up orally, just because of its ease of use and being able to obtain it. And then if you wanted to go, I believe you'd have to go through a doctor, right, and have the injectable form. You'd certainly need to do that for the IV form. And again, in my experience, both personally and with patients, I did see some benefit, I'd call it benefit, some changes when I used it intravenously. And the dose there was typically a full gram. And the trick there, though, is when you do it intravenously, it gets your attention. And it's not just the flushing that can come with a niacin derivative. It's really kind of, to describe it, sort of a queasy stomach, maybe a stuffy nose and runny eyes and even a headache. And so for most people, you have to run it, if you're going to do a full gram, over the course of like 5 hours. So bring your computer, iPhone, book, whatever it is, because you're going to be sitting there a while. That said, there are people, and our CEO, Michael, who we used to fight for the record, who can somehow gobble it up in faster time without, trying to suffer too much, because it's not pleasant, the side effects if you run it in too quickly. But and we don't know why some people can tolerate it more than others. Supposedly, if you need it more, this is what I've heard, you can gobble it up faster without as much side effect. But gosh, as much as Michael back then and certainly me exercise, why would I need more of it? I don't know. So I'm not sure about that theory. I probably shouldn't even mention it. But anyway, there are some benefits to it. I argue that the best way to up your levels of NAD plus or to exercise, because you get all the benefits of exercise too. But I think it's worthwhile maybe experimenting with it. But if you certainly if you don't notice any difference, or if you're exercising a lot anyway, maybe your money's better spent on something like, I don't know, beta alanine, for exercise tolerance and buffering the cell than NAD plus or their precursors.
Okay. Thanks, Doc.